Today is basically a sort of summary of the last two sessions that they're recorded and they're on YouTube, internet. And I would like to today to put them together and add something that I wanted to actually have a sort of results from what we discussed before and what are my thoughts about my observation all these years and the work that I have done. I'm sure that you remember that I mentioned in my discussions before that I had the opportunity to investigate something like 12,000 cases and perform about 10,000 autopsies, examine 8,000 brains, and interview about 500,000 people that they were involved in the investigation, including the police and prosecutors and the family members. And I came to one conclusion, that everybody had different thought. No two people in all these cases, they had the same thought, the same remembrance. And that gave me the idea that God has created all of us differently. We don't think the same way, we don't do the same thing. And maybe that's good, because everybody can be really active in their own way of thinking and doing. So with that background, I would like to go with the first slide. And this is basically the slide of the two presentations. I had the two presentations. One was for development of the medical examiner system in Delaware. During my presentation, I mentioned what was happening and what was going on when I came here. And then the second presentation, as you note here, was regarding the identification of Dr. Joseph Mengele in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And when I did that investigation, they came here to, the team that we had came here to Delaware. And this is a picture that was taken in my former office, the Office of Medical Examiner. Now, as you noted before, and you can see it now, I came from Iran, Persia, and as a young man, and I came here as exchange visitor with exchange visitor visa. And as exchange visitor visa, you had to live about 2 years going outside of the United States and then come back if they wanted to stay here. And one of the things that I want to do always, all my life, I was after justice. I want to know whether I could do something that would help justice in the society and in the community, especially in medical legal area. As you remember from previous presentation, the office was in the basement of a funeral home on Washington Street. And the coroners, who were the undertakers, they were really running the investigation of deaths in the state of Delaware. Of course, that was not a building that you could do your work, and we didn't have much of the facilities. So after I begged them for some facilities, they guided me to two dilapidated buildings on the Price's Corner. They were going really to destroy them, but ultimately they decided to let me have them. And then the back of these two buildings, there was a garage, and I was very lucky that garage to be my autopsy room area. And I was also very lucky to have an autopsy table from a funeral home that they wanted to discard it, but I bought it for $50, so I started doing my autopsy on the autopsy table in a garage, and that was the best system that I had. And I went, as you remember, perhaps during my previous presentation, it was very hard to put the things together and work with the politicians to get rid of the coroner system. And the decision was somehow to get rid of them and bring up to date the medical examiner system. The Medical Society was very helpful to me in my endeavor trying to change the system from the old coroner system to a new medical examiner system. And I certainly appreciate from all those years, going back to 65 years ago when I joined the Medical Society here, State Medical Society in Delaware. They have been helpful to me, not only to establish medical examiner system, but everything that I have done in my endeavor, not only in Delaware, but also in the United States of America, and also outside of the United States, throughout the world, that I performed a number of medical, legal, investigative systems. So I really appreciate the Medical Society of Delaware for all the help that they have given me all these years. Ultimately, we were able, with the help of former late Senator Dean C. Steele, to bury the old coroner system, and we established for the first time medical examiner system. And we were able, with their help and the help of the Medical Society in Delaware, to start a new building as opposed to that old garage that I was doing my work. Really, the work of the medical examiner system was not to do the examination for the dead people, but also to learn something that we could be helpful to the society in many respects. And you can see here the things that the medical examiner system, not only in Delaware, but throughout the states, actually United States of America, we established a number of things that before was not available to be accomplished, but the medical examiners were able to do so. And I was able, with the help of, again, Medical Society of Delaware, and also our colleagues, to establish a national standard. And I was also a lucky person to be elected as the president of the medical examiner system in this country. And I started writing establishment of system that was updated for medical examiner system throughout the country. And all these things. One of the examples is, for instance, all the safety measures that we have in our automobiles that we drive, they all came from medical examiner system, because based on the type of incidents and injuries that we saw, we had to let them know what kind of a change should be done in the actually changes in developing the automobile system. For instance, the windshields used to be shattered and injured, and now they are not shattered to produce injuries. The collapsible steering wheel, all the knobs that you had in the automobile, they used to produce a lot of injuries in the body. Now they're all recessed. So a lot of things that the medical examiners have done throughout the country, and including what we did here in Delaware, has been very important for actually health of the people in the United States and also throughout the world. Now I'm going to come to the real conclusion about what happened in the past. When I did all these things from the beginning, and also when we got to the important point, always the state police wanted to have my laboratory and my office. And when I looked at the system in the United States, in our justice system, I remember that the system came from England, and usually in most other countries in the world, a judge sits in the court and you have the two sides presenting the case, the police and prosecutors and the defense, and the judge makes the decision. But here in the United States of America and in the state of Delaware, actually we have a jury of 12 sitting there, and they have to make a decision. And we have the prosecutors and the police, and then on the other side we have the defense. Any evidence that has to be scientifically established, it has to be independent, cannot be a part of the prosecutor and police or a part of the defense. It should be independent. And that was my hope from the beginning when I came here, and the state police wanted to have it under the state police. And the prosecutors wanted to do the same thing. And just very briefly, I want to mention about the prosecutor's office. A young lady one day came, this is as soon as I built that new building, a young lady came over there and said, I'm just starting as the prosecutor, and I would like you to actually present the case in the court as an expert the way that I would like to have it, because the way that you have written, I cannot win the case. And I said that I'm not here for you to win the case. I'm here to present the scientific evidence as I see it, independent from the prosecutor and the defense. Well, unfortunately, that case started for the next 2 decades, 3 decades, that they have done everything, she had done everything that could be done in order to get rid of me and put the system under the state police. And this has been going on all the years that I was here. And I wouldn't give up for what I wanted to do, not only here and nationally. I always insisted that medical examiner system should be independent. So the state police and the prosecutor and the governor always listened to these people. And ultimately, they wanted to get rid of me. So everything that they could under the sun to do to get rid of me, they did. And give you one example, for instance, and many other examples are. They implanted a secretary in my office, and that secretary came in with their recommendation that was supposed to be able to actually take shorthand, 120 letter words per minute, and also type 120 words per minute. It turned out that not only she didn't do any of these things, but she couldn't even type two lines from one page with the typewriter. So that's the type of thing that I had to fight in order to defend our office against the involvement of the police and prosecutor. But nonetheless, they won the case to get rid of me, and I was forced to ultimately retire. And what they did actually, as you note here, they opened a department by the name of Department of Safety and Security, Homeland Security, which is a federal government. It has nothing to do with the state. And then they put the Office of the Medical Examiner under the title of Division of Forensic Science, under this other department, which has nothing to do, of course, with the state of Delaware. Guess what? They even didn't know that we don't have just forensic science. There are forensic sciences. And just to show you, at the time I was nationally here involved with the forensic sciences, and I was just elected as vice president of forensic sciences, not forensic science. And because of what they were doing, I had to step aside, so I didn't run for presidency. But just to show you that we don't have forensic science. So they were so ignorant of the fact that they thought that forensic science, we put it under this department, so everything would be under the police department and the prosecutor's office, so we don't have an independent system. And so what they did, they hired a new medical examiner. And in fact, this new medical examiner, which you see it on the right here, came to my office as an assistant for a few months. But he said that he didn't like the salary, so he left. And he was then appointed by the state police and the Attorney General's office in that new department. And guess what he was doing? He was doing the work in Rhode Island. He was hired over there doing the work in Rhode Island. And then he had his own private work, aside from medical examiner's work. And he had his own secretary in the medical examiner's office, paid by the taxpayers of the state of Delaware. I mean, can you imagine what I went through and what they were doing here? And he was making money for 2 decades from the taxpayers' money. And finally, some people found out about it, and the prosecutor's office finally, they had to try him in court. And the judge decided, in my opinion, if I were to be the judge, I would have put him in prison. But he had to pay $100,000 as a fine, and then they took his license away. But with these things that he was doing and the way that I put it together, I didn't have a laboratory. So every day I used, not every day, but twice a week, I used to take all my samples that I had to Maryland actually to Baltimore medical examiner's office, and I was doing free work for them in order for them to do my laboratory work free for medical examiner system in Delaware. And that's how I put the things together. And I started usually at 6 o'clock in the morning, driving to Baltimore, no lunch, doing all their work until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, and then coming back on my way. In fact, this goes back a long time ago. And the new, I forgot the name of it, the new hamburger company that started at that time. You remember the name of it? Yeah. And so I used to stop around 6 o'clock over there, not eating anything in the morning and lunch, and having first hamburger and French fries. Incidentally, at that time, the hamburger, which was bigger than now, and the French fries together, they were only 15 cents. And the Coke was only 10 cents. So with the 25 cents, I could have my dinner and then come back here until midnight to do the work here in the medical examiner's office. So that's the way that I worked to put the things together, and that's the way that this man was doing, and that's what they wanted. So you can see what's happening and what's going on in our society with the politicians and with the police departments and the prosecutors, that they just want to convict someone. They are not interested after justice. I'm going to mention something that is a little bit outside of the regular work of medical examiner system, but really is related, and related to medicine, related to health. And you all are familiar with it, and that's the Social Security. When I started as an intern at the hospital in Baltimore, I was supposed to get $75 a month as an intern. And my first check that came to me was only $55 as opposed to something like $80 that they were supposed to me, and was in writing. I was supposed to get $80. And I didn't know what was going on, so I went to the administrator of the hospital, and I said, "This is your letter, and where is my money, because you are giving me only $55. And I'm short right now, old and short. I was short at that time. He said, "Sit down, boy." So I sat down, and he said, "In this country, we take taxes from your money for city of Baltimore, for the state of Maryland, and then federal taxes, and something else he told me, and I didn't know what it was. He said, Social Security, we take money for that, and we in the hospital add to that. When you get to the age of 65, then they can calculate that, and then they give you the Social Security every month, certain amount of money, until you die. And there should be no taxes on it." I said, "Well, I don't know what is the Social Security." He said, "Okay." He called, I didn't have a car at that time. He called a taxi cab and said, "Take this boy to Social Security office." So I went over there, and this gentleman in the Social Security office explained to me that, yes, we have a law that you pay, or you deduct, they deduct from your income, Social Security, and your employer also has to pay something. You all know about this. And then they add them up together at the age of 65, and they come up with certain figures that they will pay you, and there are no taxes on it for the rest of your life. And perhaps, I'm quite sure that you remember that, and you know about it. And that was the law at that time, 65 years ago. No taxes on it. That's what they told me. That was the law at that time. And you know why? It was free of taxes, because at that time, people were living 65, 66, 67, and by 68, they were dead. So these politicians thought that they are going to be very nice people. They are giving free money to these people until they die. But then physicians like yourself and other people in the medical facilities, they increase the level of living from 65 going up and up and up. And as you know very well now, the average age, instead of 67, 68, right now is 88. In fact, 150 years ago only was 44, and now is 88. And I have a little bit of thing over there too. 88 is for ladies. 84 is for gentlemen. And you know why ladies are living longer? Because they are smarter. I mean that, because they know how to take care of themselves and how to take care of others. And that's why they live longer. And so after some years, they decided that we cannot give these people free Social Security. Then they started about 20, 30 years later having taxes on Social Security. So it was free at the beginning, and then they had to add that. But for me, that I started way back, and the law was no taxes on Social Security, they couldn't tax me, but they did. And then the director of, what do they call, Department of Taxation or whatever it is, and I'm presenting a case that is my wife. So that's the best example I can give you. And she was a registered nurse first in New Jersey and worked at the Margaret Haig Maternity Center with the premature babies. In Delaware, she worked at the nursing home with the elderly people as a registered nurse. But they did not pay her any money except for the Social Security money that she was receiving. And so out of that Social Security came a new taxation that was done during the period of Obamacare. And the director of that department came with this formula. They called it as IRMA. You heard about IRMA. You know what is IRMA, don't you?
Yes.
IRMA is something that they add all kinds of formula together in order ultimately to tax a large sum of money from your income and my income and her income. Anyone here speaks French? Now, IRMA, if you use it in the French language, is IRMA la douce. It's something like a friend. But IRMA here is this tabulation. As Social Security, she was to receive $8,000 a year. But look at the form. It says the benefit paid in 2022. That's total lie, because they didn't pay her $8,000 in 22. Actually, the actual money that they pay her was $632 for the entire year for Social Security, because she didn't have any other income, only Social Security. So that would be about $50 a month as a registered nurse working in 2 states. So now the new Irma, she's getting only $50. And the law at that time was no taxation, because when we started way back 65 years ago for Social Security, you didn't have to pay any taxes. 30 years later, when they didn't have the money, they put taxation on it. But the law cannot be retroactive. Although they decided, forget about retroactive. So she is paying taxes on it, and I'm paying taxes on it. After taxation in 2022, she was getting only about $40 after taxation. I'm not saying because she doesn't need the money, because I had some money from the state, and I was thinking that maybe buying a house or some land or something, you can make some money, and I did. So I put my money in the tax-free in the Newcastle County and also state of Delaware. So when you have tax-free money, you don't pay any taxes. You don't have to pay any taxes. However, in Irma, what they did, they added also that free money that you are supposed to have from free taxation. Excuse me. They added that to this so-called money that you have for Social Security. And because of the combination of these things, then they were able to take out of that $8,000 down to $632. Incidentally, I'm sure that you are aware of it, but since this is being recorded, I want to mention that they excluded the tax-free money of the millionaires, billionaires, and zillionaires. You never heard about zillionaires, have you? I created the zillionaires, and I tell you what is the meaning of zillionaires. You know, actually, I have it somewhere around here that in 2024, this year, in the world, there are 2,781 billionaires. Most of them are in this country, in our country here in the United States. But throughout the world, this year, they have a statistics, 2,781. I remember that way back, the budget of the United States was only $86 billion. Now that wouldn't do anything right now because of inflation. So I'm having a suggestion for our appropriate department in taxation that let's move someone who has, let's say, 50 billion and more, instead of calling them billionaire, now we call them zillionaires. Now, somebody asked me, what does that Z stand for? I said, well, my name in the old country was Ali Ziarati Hameli. That Z is from my Ziarati. Now, here they decided to put Ali Z Hameli. So I said, I'm using that Z for, instead of somebody has 50 billion, then you can call them zillionaire. Anybody more than 50 billion, then is a zillionaire. Now, if you don't like to use my middle initial, that's fine with me. You can say it's Zebra or Zorro. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. But I'm trying to mention to you that how they are taking your money and everybody's money, excluding millionaire, billionaire, and zillionaires from paying the taxes on tax-free bonds. But someone like me, like my wife, is included to pay. So the system just doesn't make any sense. Social Security is money. Taxes is money. But if you don't have money, we have money, but a lot of people don't have enough money, and that means that what is happening, their health is in jeopardy. Because if you don't have enough money, you don't have good insurance. So your health is going to go down. So I'm just mentioning these things because I'm going to come to some sort of a conclusion here. Now, I receive, and I'm sure that you receive, all kinds of letters from various organizations, including, of course, people that they have spent their life in military and they have injuries and they need money, and they send, I got it, I'm sure that you get these things. And for instance, they want something like $5,000 so they can pay for repair of their injured people. Now, I got another one, and several of them, and ultimately, I wrote them a little note saying that, look, the military-industrial complex and also the Department of Health and others, they have to pay for these things. So what I'm trying to tell you that instead of all these organizations that they have the money to pay to our injured soldiers and their family members, they are after you to pay for them. But they are making all these monies. And I want to share something with you that you know about it. But when I heard about it, at the beginning I didn't know. It was the time that I came to this country, and President Eisenhower was the president at that time, the second term. You remember President Eisenhower was the 4-star general when the Second World War started. And then he was the leading general that we won the Second World War. And he became a 5-star general. And people in this country started to actually elect him as president in 1952 first, and then the second time in 1956. So by 1959, at that time, he was still a president of the United States, and I just came to this country. It was the last months of his presidency. I didn't know much of English, but he said one short sentence that I had to go to the library several times to find out what's the meaning of it. I'm sure that you remember this. The word was, my fellow American, be worried about military-industrial complex. That was his word, military-industrial complex. Now, what is military-industrial complex? It's a company that provides and builds all these military equipment. And the Department of Health, and with the budget they have, they only can buy some of these things. But then the rest of them is in the storage area. So the military-industrial complex, with some help of some politicians, they go to various countries of the world and they start wars so they can sell all these things. That's how we are involved in all over the world with military-industrial complex. Now, it's not only military right now. A lot of other industries now is involved. You have seen everything. Every day you see it. Now is cars, for instance. I bought a car, Mercedes-Benz, for my wife. Mercedes-Benz is supposed to work for 200,000 miles. But after 3 months, suddenly the brake started having some problems. So I went over there to the place that I bought it. I said, the brake doesn't work. And they said, you have to buy a new one. We cannot repair it. See, it's another industry right now in our country here. I bought a car that is called, I don't know whether I should say all these things or not, but I bought a car that is called the Lifetime. Do you remember the name of it? Infinity. Infinity means that it's going to last for a lifetime. So after a while, I started having problem with the car. And they said, we can't fix it. I said, why? Why not? Said, because the company that sells us and prepares the supplies for repair, they don't make them after 10 years. I said, so what can I do? He said, you have to buy a new one. After 10 years, we cannot repair it. I said, why do you call it infinity? Why don't you call it tenfinity? They haven't accepted my proposal. So still is selling infinity. But that's the type of things that are going on, not only in this country, but all over the world. Everything is money. The money, and I don't know whether it's coming out through our, you remember that what happened after shortly after the Second World War, because we had problems with one of the countries that decided to attack the western portion of the United States. And by that time, actually, the atomic bomb that was initially brought from Germany, the United States decided to, I was told at the time that only they wanted to test it, but they really wanted to attack Japan, and they did it. And so 2 types of bombs, as you can see the picture here, in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki were dropped over there. And you can see the number of the people that they died. They were dying at that time. and they injured, and some soldiers also, they died from these 2 bombs that they were dropped over there. So then they decided to build the atomic bomb, and these are the results of, they show that when they explode one of these bombs, what kind of a structure you get. And here, I'm sure that you have seen this. We have now 9 countries in the world that they have atomic bombs. And here it shows the number for each country. And the rest of the countries in the world, 179, they don't have any, and they tell them that you have no right to have it. So the 9 countries says we have the right to have it, and the other 179, for whatever reason, I don't know what's the reason, but they don't have the right to have it, but we have the right to have it. So one of these days, I hope God doesn't permit that. Incidentally, I believe in God. And God created all the human beings and everything that we see in the face of this earth. Not only this earth, but the universe. And I believe that we don't have one universe, we have many universes. And it's not universes. By dictionary, you have to say universal, if you want to make it plural. But in any event, if one country decides to drop now atomic bomb, do you think the other country is going to use a kitchen knife to defend? No, they're going to use atomic bomb. So if we don't stop this, and we all are responsible for it, and we have to tell our politicians, stop it, because not only the Earth, the planet of Earth is going to be destroyed, but also the whole planet that we have here is going to be destroyed. So I'm saying all these things because this is a part of the health. When you kill someone, that's health, whether we want it or not. But in any event, this is the way that we have right now, and we all have to be talking to our representatives and see what's going on and what's happening. Now, I'm sure that you have received these things in your mail, because I keep receiving these things every other day. As a senator, I'm sure you heard about the name Ted Cruz.
Yes.
And he's telling me that
from Texas.
We have to have a limitation for our senators and representatives. He's telling me, telling you, telling everybody. You and I know, because when they get in the office, what is the first thing that a senator or representative think as soon as gets into office? Right. Not your welfare, my welfare, not your tax, my tax, not your health, my health. The first thing that they want to see, how they can be re-elected at the end of the year. Then the second year, how to be re-elected, until the 10th year. And then they think about, well, why am I here? Let me think what I have to do at the 11th year. So he is now finding about that. And he's saying that there should be a limitation. And this is the first time that I agree with a politician. There should be a limitation. And I think, in my opinion, there should be a limitation of maximum of 10, 12 years for the senators and representatives. And the worst part is, I'm sure that you know better than I do, is the Supreme Court. 9 justices will decide for the next 200 years what should be done to us. And I think there should be a limitation there too. So there should be a limitation of 12 years maximum, 10, 12 years for all these elected people. And also, the judges should not be elected by politicians, should be elected by independent people, like, for instance, at the law schools, they have teachers over there, and they know something about justice. So outside of the politics, they should actually elect or nominate and to be elected judges locally, statewide, and internationally. So that's why I'm showing these things, because this is my personal conclusion. It has nothing to do with the Medical Society's opinion, but I came to the conclusion that justice is a part of the health of the human being. And then, as my last picture in this area, is the brain that we all have. We all have human beings throughout the world, a brain. And the brain is the king. We all have the king in our skull. And depending on the way that is developed, depending on what is in our background, depending on what we do, the brain is the king and makes the decision. One makes to kill somebody, and one determines how long it takes for the light to go from here to the end of the universe. So this is the brain. We all have it, depending how our health is helping that. And we can then build whatever we should build. And the reason that I'm showing this, because what we are all born with it in general. I'm not saying you or I, but in general. Everybody that is in this world and start money and might, they want to have it. Then it's, if you want to have it, you must fight. That's what they do to have the money and to have the might, so they fight. But I'm saying that, no, you should talk. Talk to each other and resolve the problem. Don't use atomic bomb. Don't use other bombs and kill each other and destroy everything. That is my personal opinion. So with that background, I just want to say a few words and at the end that when I was 4.5 years of age, I was in Rasht, a city in northern part of Iran. I was living with my parents and my grandfather, which was the father of my mother. He was a very wealthy man. He had a lot of rice, as a rice businessman, and everybody knew about it. And Rasht, that city was very close to Caspian Sea. And I was always 4.5 years of age, sitting next to my grandfather. The Russians invaded northern Iran. And I noted at that time that the Russian general came with his soldiers and some interpreters. And they knew that my grandfather had the rice. So he came in with his gun and put it on his chest and said that, give me the key to your storage area. I have all these soldiers here. They need something to eat. If you don't, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill this boy. I'm sitting next to him, and next to my grandfather. And I'm going to burn the city of Rasht. And as a child, 4.5, I didn't know what burning of city, what it meant. I didn't know killing me, so what? But I loved my grandfather. So you know what I did? I put my hand in his pocket, took the key out, and gave it to the general. He laughed, and through his interpreter, he said, he kissed my head, 4.5 years old, and he said, because you gave me the key, I'm not going to burn the city. 4.5. And I'm just talking right now what's going on in Ukraine. In Ukraine. The Russians wanted to have a portion of Ukraine. It was a part of Russia, Soviet Union, but somehow after the Second World War, they decided to have some drinks and gave it back. Fine. But the Russians wanted to have the water at the bottom here because now we, 26 countries now, staying on this side against Russians. And right now, they are fighting over there, killing children, killing human beings, destroying buildings and everything. I wish that the president of Ukraine could think like a 4.5-year-old and somehow talk to these people and manage something like a little area that they said the Russians were living there and we want to have this water. Why not to talk? Why burn everything? Why kill everybody? Because ultimately, it is my opinion. It's not the opinion of Medical Society. It is my opinion that sooner rather than later, all these businessmen, all these various companies, and atomic industry, they are going to destroy this world. They are going to destroy the whole planet of Earth. And my suggestion as one human being, as one member of this society, my personal opinion is we need some changes in our constitutional amendment. And this is serious. Number one, it has nothing to do with the Medical Society. It's my personal opinion. If they want to accept some part of it, it's fine with me. If you want to accept some part of it, number one is health. In the Constitution, the number one should be health. Health for everyone, including everything from the time of birth to the time of death, excluding the insurance companies, because insurance companies are the enemies of your health and my health. I have 1,000 reasons that I have seen that the insurance companies prevented the health and caused the death. So number one, in my opinion, should be public health. Number two, right now we have it as everybody should have a gun, deserves to have a gun. Well, my friend, 250 years ago, there was no police department. There was no protection. And anybody could kill you. And so at that time, they were right to have a gun to defend themselves. But now, I have information that I got from a chief of a police here in the state of Delaware. Do you know that now in this country, United States of America, there are 17,000 police departments, which they have 1,100,000 of police officers to protect us throughout the United States. Why do we need the gun? So the kids go right now in the schools and they kill some other kids over there. Or some dangerous people, they go around and kill people because we want to have gun. No, we don't need the gun. We have the police departments protecting everyone. That's what we have to do. So that's my opinion personally. Number one should be health. Number two should be education. And number three, justice. If we have these three, then we can prevent the atomic war and we can prevent the destruction of this earth that we have. And I appreciate your time, and you can have your own opinion, but I just express my opinion, wishing you the best of health for you and your family, and wishing you good health until the age of 120. Thank you very much.
And to you too, sir. Good health.